Tim Linder here. Let's talk about gradients really quickly. If I go down in Photoshop, I've got a white document open here, and I go down to my tool panel and I grab my gradient tool. I can apply a gradient to a selection, or if I don't have anything selected, it's going to apply to my entire image. I've got my options to my gradient up here too. So if I were to get my gradient tool, and it's going to create a regular gradient. I'm going to stay away from the classic gradient right now. I have much more options with my newer gradient or more modern gradient tool. If I click and drag, it's going to create a gradient. And right now, it's creating from its most basic gradient, which is foreground color to background color, black to white. And if I click on this little pull down menu, I see here's the basics folder, and the basic is black to white. Okay, so I've got a black to white gradient. Well, black to white or foreground to background, right? So if I were to change this foreground to background color, and I say, all right, let's get a green color here, and then let's get a blue color in my background here. I've got foreground to background, and I were to look in here and I say, oh, instead of black to white, let's go foreground to background. Now that changes automatically. I don't have black to white, I've got foreground to background. And that can be applied any way that I want. I can move this around with this manipulator if I want, move the whole thing around from the center, or drag from the outside, change how this is applied, or change where the midpoint is right here from side to side. Or if I were to get a linear gradient, I could, or if I wanted to get a linear gradient, I could just click on this little icon. So this is how the gradient is applied. Right now I've got radial, let's go to linear, and now I've got a linear gradient from just one edge to the other. I can manipulate this around. If I click somewhere else, it's going to drag over here, over here, over here, over here. However I want that gradient to be applied. Okay, if I were to open some sort of an image and wanted to apply a gradient on that image, I'm going to open this image up, and I wanted to apply some sort of gradient. Let's say that I wanted to pick up the color blue in the sky, and then I wanted to create a new gradient that goes from blue to transparent so I can see what's underneath. I could come up here and say, all right, let's go from foreground color to transparent. I'll click on this, and now I've got this sort of gradient that shows up foreground to background. I'm going to undo that. Let's say I'm going to start down here and get really low. See, so I could adjust this to where that gradient is just applies that a solid color over the top of there. So from blue to transparent. So you could go from transparency as well, not just an overall color. Now, I could also, if I had some sort of selection made before I made a gradient, if this is selected and I come in with my gradient tool and I made a gradient, it's only going to show up inside that selection. Created this mask for me, my layer mask in my gradient there that did that. So with a selection made, it's just going to place the gradient inside the selection. With no selection, it's just going to create the gradient across. Now let's say that I wanted more than one color. I could go into my different options and choose multiple colors here. I could double click on a specific color and say, oh, give me an orange down there at the bottom. If I wanted more than that, or if I wanted to remove a color, I could come over to my properties panel here and look at my gradient and say, all right, instead of this blue, maybe I wanted to move this blue over and I wanted to create another one. Notice if I click right here, there's a little plus sign, and say create another color swatch right there. Double click on it. I'm going to put green in, and now I've got a kind of a rust to blue to green to black, and I can adjust that all in the manipulator over here. I can adjust it in the manipulator over here. I can click and drag and remove that out and get rid of that color if I wanted to. I could take this color and say, all right, instead of black, let's say that I wanted to do opacity controls. I want the whole thing to kind of go to transparent on this side. And so I could select this color swatch and I could say, all right, let's make it transparent. So it's going from transparent all the way across. And can't really see that on white, but if I take this whole layer here and move it into my car image here, so I can grab this out here too. And where's my car image? I'm going to grab this window, get my car image. And let's say that I were to take this gradient and put it into my gradient layer. Now I can kind of see how it goes from color to transparent. So this is the gradient tool, and these are how you can adjust and manipulate gradients. And if you wanted to, lastly, you could save your gradient for use over and over again. If you were in your properties panel of the gradient tool here, you could go in and adjust and say, all right, save that gradient right here. You could save it into a different folder if you wanted to and create a new gradient in this area for you to go back to if you wanted to later.